Good evening, this is Pops without his mug, or his glasses at this point in time. Well, here on YouTube, one of the things I plan on telling you is that tomorrow I'm going to be working on an old PK447 Kansas Instruments Peterson Manufacturing boring bar. It's a clone of a Van Norman 777S, one of the greatest portable boring bars ever built. Accuracy, I had one before that I owned, and that was a Kansas Instruments, and I had a Van Norman that I learned on, 777S, and the accuracy is ridiculous. So this one's got some problems. People really abuse the bugger. There's no excuse for what happened to it, actually. And I just started buying random parts off of eBay just to be sure I had enough. Problem is, some of them turned out to be Chinese and don't fit well. So now I got to spend $150 or more to get the final shoes for the sets that I have. I have the sets out there that have 3 shoes out of 4. Who does that? The funny part is about the cat's paws is it's horrendously stable because there's 4. The sad thing of it is they probably could have built it with 3. Not 2, but 3. So, but whatever. With the 4, it definitely centers beautifully. So I'll show you some of the gearing in that. There's still some of the grease and chips that I have to pull out of the upper gearbox, the spindle drive. And I have to pull the bearing and everything out of the bottom to replace one of the shoe guides, or whatever you'd call them. Because when I went to put the Chinese set in, one shoe went firm, and another shoe went snap. And it didn't break off the shoe, it broke off the, yeah. So, that was a headache. And I didn't get an etching tool. I need something to actually etch the shoes when I get the new set, put those on, because I'm going to have to take a sharpening stone and hand clean them off to fit. And then after that, I'm going to have to hand work them until it centers in the bore. So I've got my old case block that I can play with to start, and then later on I'm hoping, I've got a small engine here I can probably monkey with to some extent, but I'm pretty certain I could go up to Eveready Freddy's and find some block that I could practice on. Old 4 block or something that's busted and cracked. But we'll see, because what's the idea? The idea is to have the hole on these antiques. If I'm within 2 thousandths on the center line, nothing's going to care at all. But in the final result, you'd rather have it accurate. But on an 8N, it's not going to care 2 thousandths. But in my case, I'm a little bit too fastidious for that. And that PK447 I had before, the first one, I was able to sharpen the bit each run through the cylinder. And it would be so smooth that I had, and this is no lie, I couldn't use the replaceable tip. I had to use the original carbide tip. And when I cleaned it, I sharpened it every trip through the bore. It was so smooth I had to run a dingleberry hone to have any kind of surface for the rings to break in on. How do I know? There were 3 engines, 2 in particular, that I did that way by customer request. It wasn't just something that I outright did. I told them, I said, it may burn oil early, but it's the inexpensive way to go. So what do you mean? I bore a hole, I run a glaze breaker, you put your stuff in it. Was it accurate? Yeah, the hole's accurate. It's just not pretty. Okay, and they took it, and in each case it worked excellent. Boring for a sleeve, you could leave a little bit rough. Not too much rough, because it still has to have heat transfer. So even then, if I sharpened a bit for each pass through, the sleeve would have a beautiful surface to latch onto. So if I can get this one to work even close to that, I'll be quite happy. Now for sleeve boring and other rough boring, if I had to make several passes, I'd use the replaceable bit for the first two passes. And the final pass was always with a carbide bit. So, why? Well, because the tool bit could cause too much fracture. And then you'd have to really heavily hone. There were quite a few that I only had to hone 1 to 2 thousandths out of the entire bore because it didn't need to do any more than that. It's a perfectly clean, beautiful bore. Now you say some of them like Jamsey Online. Yeah, they punch a hole quick and then go to hone it. They know they're going to hone it anyway. So 3 thousandths will kind of be their minimum. They go 4 to 5. Why? To get through the fractured surface into a clean bore. And they're trying for time. If you know you're going to hone the cylinder, then what they're doing is production and giving you a good surface, better than probably some of the surfaces I put out that still worked. 2 engines I put out, 4.3 Chevys. They had 150,000 miles on them, and the owner said that when they put the engines together, they burned half a quart the first oil change, and every oil change after that, which is like 3,000 to 5,000 miles, someplace in there, he says went to 150,000 miles and never burned even a half a quart in any of the oil changes, even at 150,000. So 2 engines, 2. Well, that was just that. It's a 4.3 Chevy. Come on. Better than 350, but so my procedure worked and worked well. And some of them say, you can't. Well, there's a lot of stuff you say you can't do. And the customer, I told him, I said, start burning oil, probably 50 to 75,000. Beautiful, do it. I'm going to save that much money. I'm all on. Okay. I found out later on, because of the prices I was charging, I could have given him the full Monty and he still would have saved money. But it was a lot easier on me to bore it, dingleberry it, ship it. And it turned out it worked on a lot of jobs. And when I was the only one in the shop, that helped my personal production, where I could set the boring bar up, take my time, get it all set up, get the depth set, turn it around, make sure it didn't hit anything, and that it would shut off when it got down at the proper level, take my time and bore it. And when it started doing this thing, then I could go over and do my work. Yes, you never walk away before that tool bit's down in that hole. Ever. And then later on I learned that I could get a bit to clean off sleeves rather than try and grind them down, clean them right off. I did that in a couple of machines for guys where they could hand file the sleeve. There wasn't enough there. They could hand file it and put a straight edge on it, check it themselves, and put the engine back together. It was one of the great things about having a portable boring bar was re-sleeving engines in the tractor. The hard part was sometimes getting paid for doing something that nobody else in the entire region could do. I've been stung by that for so many times that sometimes it just makes me think, no, you're going to pull your engine. Then we'll talk about it. Well, then what? I don't know. If you want to do it in the tractor, then bring the tractor over. Why? Because I can lock it up. No payment, no machine. But anyway, this one, so I can putter around with some of my tractors. My case has dry sleeves. That may need some touch up there, but it shouldn't when I eventually find a way to get some money to fix that. So anyway, you folks have a good night. We're coming up here on 8 minutes, 23 seconds here on September the 5th, Tuesday. And I will be going to bed. Peace out.